December stringing pieces of metal mesh with wire and it taking way too long. After I connected the pieces, I also had to find a way to finish the raw edges so that they wouldn't poke through the fabric.
So that didn't work, but luckily we only got like a tiny little 1 meter strip of it to test it out. I mean, I even tried to just play around with it and see how thin it would get if I could manipulate it, but in the long run, even if that gave me like a cool effect, I don't really want to buy any new plastic, unused plastic, not from recycled materials. So if I am subjecting myself to using something synthetic and plasticky, that might as well just be some sort of tape, because it's going to be way easier to work around with.
So my dad and I went to the hardware store and got just that. A tailor from the atelier that I'm working helped me secure my mesh in between the table by just drilling a piece of wood block into it so that it wouldn't move, and it was very helpful. It wasn't moving at all, and it was quite easy to just apply my tape to the raw edges and kind of finish it similarly to bias binding. So I finished the raw edge and applied 2 pieces of tape to the other side so that it will be secure. So I thought I was a genius. I connected all of those pieces together very neatly, like trying to be as precise as possible because I wanted to preserve this edge. And now I have to disconnect those pieces because this section is way too small, and I'm going to have to connect a larger piece of that metal mesh in order to make up for the 16 centimeters that I am lacking. And with that, I was done with my metal pieces for a while. I'm still waiting for a stamp to arrive from Moscow, which I'm going to be using to put a layer of print over top of my final fabric with, so I'm not going to be finalizing it yet. Just keep coming back to look number 5, so I had to seam rip this certain thing and insert my wiring inside because I tried to kind of push it in, but it kept ripping. I just finished stitching the wiring inside the shoulder seam and I feel like it sits pretty well. I connected it in the neckline and I added another wire in the neckline, so when this section is closed, this wire kind of stands upright pretty well in comparison to this side, which kind of leans to look down. So I'm gonna add the second wiring in here, and the top section of that dress is gonna be done. Still have to figure out how I fix this area in place. I initially was thinking about kind of stitching it over top of that bodysuit that I have, but I really like that bodysuit to be worn on its own as well, so I'm not sure, we'll see. I decided to use the elastic, burn the edge of it so that it wouldn't fray, and tested different methods on zigzags, so different widths and different lengths of it. And I stitched my slit shut so that it would be a bit more pointy and sharp, resembling the collar of the neckline of the same dress. Happy with my look number 4, I decided to go a completely different direction to get my mind off it. So I chose a very bodycon, very tight silhouette and created a pair of leggings and a top. I was inspired by the pat downs that you get in airports because a while ago in the beginning of semester A I made a map of how pat downs happen, and you can see that in my sketchbook tour if you're interested. So I followed that and this inspiration finally came back into play. So I made the first tests for those leggings that you saw me working on, and immediately I see multiple mistakes. First of all is that I cut the fabric in the wrong grain direction, which I noticed right away, but that was a bit too late to react because this is a sample and I could test out different areas and see what mistakes I would make right away. So the first one is the grain direction. The fabric stretches this way more than it stretches that way, which is wrong for leggings. You want to have some stretch, you want to feel like you're being hugged, and right now it doesn't really feel like it, so that's why it bunches in this area, which it shouldn't do. Also, the stitching in here, I would prefer it to go way higher and way more narrow in this section because it would look a bit more similar to the purple leggings that you saw me making. So the length is fine because I'm just 170 and the models are usually 180. It will be okay on them. That should end right around the ankle area. Then the stitching here doesn't look so intentional. It feels like I accidentally made a mistake, so that is not an amazing look. And with the back portion, I'm not super happy with either, and that's because the way that the stitching that is supposed to hug the booty is positioned makes it feel way wider and saggier, which is obviously not what you want to have. So I marked up an area where the butt actually ends and how we kind of could curve around it. And also you can see that in this section the distance between the side seam is way bigger than in this area, and initially I thought that that wouldn't be a problem because I wanted it to kind of hug the booty around, but now we can see that the hug hugging method should be actually very different, and this only makes it feel like I made a mistake, which is not something you want to see in your final product. The way the undies go in the back also makes it feel like the booty is sagging and kind of is dragging everything down, and that's why the underwear stitching is way too low. So I'll be making those adjustments and probably making another pair of those closer to the final thing quite soon. The only problem is that I bought the fabric from the outlet store and I don't think they have any of that left, so I'm gonna have to kind of pick and choose my battles and maybe make a pair of leggings that are final from this fabric, but then make a top out of scraps, which is something I was planning from the beginning, but I was hoping I would have a bit more of that fabric. So we'll see. Maybe that top is gonna be a little bit different than what I actually had on the sketch. My dad and I found this completely random place that sold perfect wire for me to create my own paper clips out of, so that I could use them as accessories and handles for bag, which I've been initially planning on doing from the start of the project. I noticed that it's a little bit hard for me to finish the last few percent of a piece. Like these 5% unfinished leggings were sitting on a mannequin for the past maybe month, so I finally stitched them together and they're now done. Because I decided that look number 6 might be a little bit too bulky with all of the pieces of fabric, with like 80 meters of fabric encased into 6 meters in the front and 6 meters in the back, that might be a bit unnecessary, especially if I want to showcase those leggings. And because I really like how they look from the back and I don't want to hide it, I really wanted to showcase it on the final thing. And if I had a giant piece of fabric coming from the back, it would not be visible. And initially in my sketches when we were in Corona Mode Volume 1, I kind of designed for this side piece to be only visible, but that's not that visually interesting. And especially if I were to remove the whole back portion of look number 6, I would be able to see the side when she walks by, to see the back when she walks by, and maybe even a little bit of that front portion as well. Obviously I won't be throwing out those 3 meters of fabric that are initially coming from the back. I will be reusing them, and especially it's a great news for this look because yes, sure, I will be changing it up. I will probably be making those leggings that I tested out, the top that can be coming along with that, but I will also be able to make this sort of vest coat, which I've been obsessing over since the beginning of that project. It won't be this complicated and this technically difficult because visually, now that I've been looking at this range plan for like 5 months after I graduated, I'm not super happy with how much information is happening in this area, and I don't think it's super successful. So I will be breaking it down, and also on the current range plan you can see that she is wearing leggings and there is no coat. I will obviously be adjusting that. Since the leggings are now finished and all I have left is just finishing up those hanging threads, I decided to try on this top sample, which I actually had finished with lining, hand stitching the entire thing from within. And then once I finished it, I decided to try it on and rip the entire fucking lining because I rage quit. This fabric has some give to it and it stretches out, especially in the neckline, which is quite narrow for a head, but it stretches out when you put it on, so that's not a big deal unless the lining isn't stretching at all. So I ripped it out, not gonna fucking care about it. If I want to wear this thing, it's just gonna have to be without lining, and that's gonna be it. So I don't even know why I bothered stitching the entire thing in lining. No idea. Also, this is not comfy at all, so I initially wanted it to be completely like an openable zip, but I didn't find one this tiny, so I'm gonna have to deal with that at some point as well. Maybe that's just gonna have to be hooks like on bras or something, or in corsets, don't know yet. But what I'm doing now is changing the entire top for look number 2, which you may have seen on the photo shoot. I fucking hated the thing. I mean, today is the day that I'm just hating everything, and I'm gonna be remaking this top in that leather for look number 2. I have already ripped out the neckline, which is the collar that I made a while ago. I kind of like it. It's made out of leftover pieces, and I'm gonna have to go through this hellhole over there trying to find the leftover pieces because I saved everything. I didn't throw anything else. And then also this is the dress. I finished all of those side pieces, and now I'm gonna have to also stitch in those invisible little clips. I would have opted for metal ones, but they are gonna be visible if I sew them on. Even though this is gonna be the inside area, this has to be secure and transparent in case those sections fall out. When I created this top, I didn't make a pattern, and now I had to do just that. So I had to create an exact replica of this top with a scrap piece of fabric, then break it down, create a tester pattern, and then adjust it and make a final piece of pattern. So that took a while, but now we're here. Now we can make the leather top. I have actually developed already a pattern for this. This is the front, this is the back, and also I have like the breast piece that goes into this section. The main issue right now is that the neckline combined of the front and of the back piece of this pattern is wider than the actual collar. So now I'm faced with the reality that I'm gonna have to cut it in the middle and attach a separate 8 centimeter piece to the whole section. So that's gonna be a challenge for today. I am lacking this fabric. I went to fabric store to check out whether or not they had scraps of this, and they only had, first of all, giant rolls of this fabric, but also not the same color, only dark blue. And I was kind of contemplating the idea, but then obviously took it a bit back because I know that this is synthetic fabric and I don't want to buy more synthetics. The back portion is probably going to be bought from an outlet store in some sort of stretchy material that will be similar to this color. So hopefully I find it. This top is close to finished, but there are obviously some minor adjustments that I would like to make. First of which is this section. It comes up way too high. Initially I had this back portion be less curved than it is right now, so I'm going to adjust it by pretty much folding it down and making it a straight line across that side. Then also what I'm not super fan of is that this side is way too loose. I would like it to hug underneath the breasts and make it a bit tighter, so this would have to go into that seam from the middle point. And also this is an extra seam allowance which will go underneath, so there is not much to be done, but as you can see as well, this seam wants to kind of continue to go here, so that's what I'm gonna make it go as. On the back there is also a small thing to make. You can't really see it right now, but the lining tries to peek out from the red side, but surprisingly that only happens on this side. The other side seems to be quite okay. We'll see, maybe I'll adjust it as well, but here I'm gonna also create some kind of connection method. I'm yet to figure out what that's gonna be, but probably I'm gonna make my paperclip a little bit of an enlarged version so that you can actually hook those two together. Sounds like a lot of adjustments, but that's what you kind of have to work with. Hopefully I'm gonna be done with it today, and that's gonna be it for this top. I tore apart a completely finished top that I actually rushed to make in the end of August for a photo shoot, and I wasn't really happy with the finishing, so I started over, obviously reusing the same pattern pieces that I tore apart. I printed another set for a top and sewed it for a really cool upcoming collaboration, and yes, there's a lot of white space that I could have filled with a print, and I feel guilty, but I'm gonna be reusing that white mesh anyway, so there is no waste coming, don't worry. All of the tiny offcuts that I had from this top and all the previous purple tops I reused and created my own face masks in the spirit of 2020 and apparently 2021 as well. So that is all I managed to create in December. Thank you for watching, and I hope you're going to be staying over to see what my design process is going to look like in 2021. See you next time, bye!